Hi, welcome to this episode of Author Eke. I'm Travis Davis, your host. Tell us your story. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Author Eke. I am Travis, and we got Brian today. First of all, I would recommend you go check his website out. That's the first thing I would say after you, of course, watch and listen to the podcast. So, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and let you run with it from there.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Brian Paone. A lot of people mess up the pronunciation of the name because it's Italian, but it's the E is said at the end, so it's Paone. It's Paone. And my website's just myname.com, so brianpaone.com, Brian with an I. And I, since seventh grade, had wanted to be an author. That was kind of like my lifelong dream. Oddly, I wanted to be an author and or a police officer. And
Some
I
are
started
both,
writing.
by the way. There's a lot that are both.
Yeah. So I am right now a retired police officer. I worked in law enforcement for 16 years. So yeah, but that's kind of fast forwarding here. I wrote all through junior high and high school. I went to college for criminal justice, got my degree. All of my electives were creative writing, or so, I kind of minored in the creative writing stuff. And I got hired by a police department in 2002, kind of put the writing on the back burner, picked it up again. I decided to write my first novel because all the way up until then, I had only written short stories. Mm-hmm. Decided to write my first novel in 2006, which then it got published in 2007. And so I kept writing and working as a police officer. My wife is in the military, so every time we got stationed somewhere else, I would move and transfer and get hired on with the local department. I was a municipal police officer most of my career. I did work for a sheriff's office in Georgia for 13 months before I moved over to the city police that was in the county. Yep. And then I ended my policing career as of right now with a 2-year stint at Marine Base Cherry Point PMO. So I did my last 2 years of working on an actual being a police officer on a military base, which up until then I had never done. It always been city policing. Mm-hmm. And I consistently released novels as I was working as a police officer. My wife got orders to Monterey, California in 2018. And it was that move where I kind of proverbially and physically turned in my badge and my gun and decided to make the pen my full-time job. My 7th overall novel was released in June of this year. And I'm already deep into a couple chapters of what will be my next novel that's going to come out early next year. I'm not a genre author, as you'll see if you check out my website. As we were saying earlier, that they tell you you're supposed to write what you like to read. Fortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, I like to read everything from Stephen King down to Ernest Hemingway to Edgar Allan Poe up to Sylvia Plath. So, I mean, what do you do with that when they tell you you're supposed to write what you like to read, So every time there's a new book idea, it tends to be in a genre I've never dabbled in before.
Well, that's interesting.
Which is interesting. There's pros and cons to that when it comes to marketing. Yeah. Marketing is a whole different animal of the publishing writing world. I kind of, one of my jokes is that to be a professional author, it's 30% writing and 70% marketing.
I tell everybody the same thing. It's 2/3 of a pie.
That's what it is.
It is.
And there's so many new authors just starting out who think that their whole job is to just write the book and then it's going to sell itself, or write the book and someone else is going to promote it or market it for them, and there's no legwork. Even if you're traditionally published in this day and age, you have to have a social media presence. You have to be out there at the book festivals, in the conventions, at your booth, selling your table. You can't just sit back, put your hands behind your head, recline, and just wait for the royalty checks to come in. Yeah. We don't live in that age anymore. Mm-hmm. Unless you're a household name where every time you drop a book, 1 million copies get sold because of your name. It doesn't matter if you're self-published, indie published, or traditionally published. I mean, there's a hustle that has to happen. And so I find being a multi-genre author, I tend to, so here's a really quick example. I do all of the conventions in the area, in the DC, Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland area. This year alone, I think I'll have done 16 when the year is over. And some of these are the big 3-day conventions, like Awesome Con and Galaxy Con, and I have booths at all of them, and I do all the mini cons and everything. And if you're an author who only writes in one genre, your job is both easier and harder at the conventions. It's easier because if someone walks by your table and you say, "Hey, what do you like to read?" Or, "Hey, do you like sci-fi fantasy?" And they say, "Yes, that's my favorite genre," and that's all you write, well, then you can get them over your table, and it's easy. The work is almost done for you, right? Because they've told you that they like to read your genre that you write. So I find that's easy. But if that's all you write, and someone says, "Oh, I like horror," and none of your books have anything to do with horror, there's no amount of salesmanship that's going to get them to buy one of your books easily. Now, there's always a possibility, but you're really struggling at that point. So
you're overselling at that point.
Yeah, you start to, and then you start sounding like a used car salesman, right?
Yeah,
now it sounds like you're peddling something.
Yeah.
So those are the pros and cons of being a single genre author. The pros and cons for being someone like me, I have a straightforward horror novel. I have a time travel novel. I have a crime noir supernatural trilogy. I have a historical war novel about the Falklands War in Britain in 1982. So I'm all over the place. And the book that I'm working on now is I don't even know what genre it is. I'm calling it an on the run book, meaning that the main character has to go on the run by different groups of people who have realized he has certain information, and now he's on the run. I mean, I guess it's a thriller, but it's not a crime thriller because it's not like a Jack Reacher or Lee Child type book, but the whole book's going to take place on the run. So I don't know if we call that action, but again, that doesn't fit into any of the other books I've written. So the pros and cons for me being at conventions, is the con of it is I tend to not I have to almost build my fan base with each book because I don't have like the sci-fi fan base built into my name or anything like that.
Which one do you like to write? Which one do you enjoy writing more?
So I enjoy writing anything that is on the darker side, the more macabre side, things that are more Clive Barker, H.P. Lovecraft-esque. I really like the Twilight Zone. I call it the Twilight Zone stuff. I love writing Twilight Zone-y things, where it's not necessarily in your face horror, but it's unsettling and kind of on the darker side. You don't quite know why it makes you feel weird, but it does. I don't. So that's what I enjoy writing. Even my time travel novel and my novel about the Falklands has some dark tones to it. So I think that's just naturally, how I write.
I think my first novel wasn't too dark. My second one, I'm about done now. It's a little darker. It's got a little, it's hard, killing people off, like tough.
Yeah, I think I like to see I don't want to say evil inside normal people, but I think I like to explore with my characters them not always making the best decisions or the most morale decisions, and then what are the consequences of that when these are everyday people, where if you were put in that situation, you kind of question, geez, I may have done the same thing, but I would never say it out loud because that's not what we should do. And I don't know if that's all my years, working the streets as a police officer, or I've seen some ugly things, but
subconscious
rubbing off
on there.
I don't know, but I tend, while most of my stories, do have resolution and a somewhat of a happy ending, I do like to put my characters through the shredder before we get there. Yeah.
I agree. So what's the name of your latest book?
So it's called The Post-War Dream. Yeah, and that's the one about a Royal Marine coming home from the Falklands. Now, the book, and whenever I say that, I'm always nervous I'm going to turn people away from reading the book because they're going to say, "Well, I don't know anything about the Falklands. I didn't even know that was a war. What do I care about the
Well,
Falklands?" You know?
that's sad.
Yeah, well, but it
No,
happens. So
I
I,
know.
I, I kind of added into my elevator pitch for this book that the book has nothing to do with the war whatsoever. It's about what his frame of mind when he comes back and tries to integrate back in society from his PTSD and his survivor guilt.
Yeah.
You literally could take this character and have him come home from Vietnam. You could have him come home from the Iraqi war. You could have him come home from really any war. I chose the Falklands because it is a moment in time that I found the war very interesting. But at the heart of the book, it's not about the Falklands War, right? It's a human story about him coming back into his neighborhood where people at the pub are trying to buy him drinks and they're clapping him on the back and calling him a war hero. And inside he's torn up. This is not a spoiler, so I can kind of say it because it's revealed in the very beginning, but he gets somebody killed on the battlefield by doing something that he was ordered not to do. So he comes home and that is the weight on his shoulders that he cannot shake. They throw a block party for him, to celebrate winning the war and him coming home alive. And he winds up getting intoxicated way earlier than he should at the party and starts, true feelings come out and he starts getting belligerent. He gets into a fist fight at a pub because someone is kind of, is saying things he doesn't want to hear. So, and it also puts a strange relationship on him and his dad. His dad was vehemently against him joining the Marines and then against the war. So when his son comes home, he doesn't welcome him with open arms. His dad actually gives him the silent treatment and the cold shoulder, which creates another conflict with the main character. So now he can't even go home and have peace, where home is supposed to be the place we go and have peace. He can't even do that in the book. So I really wanted to tackle the kind of the PTSD and that survivor's guilt, hero's remorse. When someone's waving a balloon and a flag in your face and with smiles and clapping you on the back, how it's destroying him inside each time this happens. And then it all comes to a head.
That's an actual thing.
And then if you want to know what happens, read the book. But again, I put out there that you don't need to know a single thing about that war to enjoy the novel and feel what he's going through.
Yeah, but I think that's a catchy title because people say, "What Falklands War?" I mean, it was like the longest distance war ever fought.
I mean, 8,000 miles.
It's off the coast of Argentina.
It's considered they call it the gateway to Antarctica. It's like its unofficial name.
So I used to work with somebody that she was in the Royal Air Force that actually participated in the Falkland War.
Oh, cool. My wife and I flew to England and we got to interview 10 vets from the war in 8 days. We did a whirlwind tour of England. I had the whole schedule mapped out and we interviewed everybody from enlisted Marines all the way up to naval officers. I did the gamut. I wanted enlisted guys. I wanted the Army para guys. I wanted naval officers who were on some of those ships on the Sheffield when it got hit. But the biggest star was Brigadier Major General Julian Thompson invited my wife and I to his flat in London. The Brigadier is the top dog of the ground forces. You don't go any higher than him. I mean, he is the pinnacle of the war. I mean, he's the guy making all the decisions for the ground forces. And we spent 3 hours in his flat in London, and that was I was almost oddly starstruck being in his presence, because he was very open and forthright, and I asked him a couple hard questions about the war, and he was very transparent. And we flew home from England, because I live in America, realizing that I had just interviewed these actual people who had fought in the war, and some of their stories were disgusting and bloody.
Right.
And I said, geez, now I got a big task ahead of me. I'm an American novelist. I'm going to try
Yeah.
to write about a British war. I don't know, their dialect. I don't know
Right.
their
Right.
accent,
That is
that they're a
tough.
little, it was a hard,
That
from
is
start to
tough.
finish, it took me 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is tough.
Yeah, it took me 4 years from start to finish, to feel like I finally got the novel as correct as I could, by someone who isn't from there.
Yeah, I think that'd be
you
the
know?
toughest would be the dialogue and just the vernacular, right?
Yeah.
And be able
Yeah.
to really capture that
It's
and the pace and tone of those people. I mean, I've met I was in the Army 20 years or so, and I've met a lot of generals and things, and come to figure out, they like to have a beer. They like
right.
they
Right.
like they're just people, which
Yep.
which
Yep.
is cool. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so what's kind of on your it's on the horizon?
So, like I said, I'm a couple chapters into this on the run novel I've come up with. My main character is as boring, as cardboard, as two-dimensional as I could make him on purpose. I
Yeah.
mean, he is literally the wallflower, the epitome of a wallflower, almost to the point where he's cliche. But
Uh,
that device is being done on purpose, because he's going to be uh, with somebody at the trigger incident of the novel, who um, people groups of people are going to start going after the person he happens to be with, and by vicarious liability, he has to go on the run too. So here's this man who hates excitement, who doesn't even like
yeah.
going out to social events with his wife. He's
Mhm.
as bland as they come. Is now forced into this. Uh,
Well, that's interesting.
yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Judgment Night from the '90s, but it's almost like this. He's he's going to be on the run from like actual gangs, like street gangs. The
Hmm.
police are going to be after them, and he's along for the ride, and he's got to survive and go along with it. And so that's what
You got to
there
pick
was
your
some.
friends. You got to pick your. My mom always said, pick your friends.
Yeah, yeah. So it's yeah. So I just I think I'm trying to explore what would be like if you took the most humdrum person imaginable and kind of threw them in this action sequence. And
Are
how they
you
could.
how are you published? Are you traditional? Are
Scout,
you
Scout
self?
Media. Scout Media is the press.
Okay.
It's a small press. And The Scout Media has an author from England, a couple American authors.
Mhm.
They put out anthologies that includes dozens of authors, every
Mhm.
year.
Right.
Um, there's a children's book published on Scout Media, so it's kind of all
Okay.
over the
Pretty
thing.
pretty diverse.
Yeah, and then I have 4 to 5. Well, I would say I have 5 solid ideas for the next handful of books.
Mhm.
After this one, I just got to decide what order I'm going to write them in.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I
I
always
have
I
a.
leave my books open for something. What I did in the first book, I put 3 individuals become a team,
Mhm.
and now there's 4. And I said, well, I want to keep I want to kind of have their presence. So they're actually going to have a presence on the internet. They're gonna have their own website, and it's gonna be
That's
a
cool.
clandestine sort of thing. And
Yeah.
you're gonna read their bios. You're gonna be able to see the missions. You're actually gonna be able to say, I would like to see this in the next book. So take what folks want to read and then write it.
So
And
it's like an interactive choose your own
yes,
adventure.
yes, yeah. Yeah, I tell my wife about the books and everything. She just sits there and goes, "How do you come up with this stuff?" I'm like, I just think of something, but then I take that thought till it finishes,
Right.
or go another direction. So yeah, so I have one I did this year. I have another one I'll be getting out soon, and I already have what I want to do with the third one. Um, and I'm kind of debating whether to write a leadership book or kind of a personal kind of type book, or another fiction. I think mine is more historical fiction or realistic fiction. Because I tell people about the book and they look at me and go, is this real? I'm like,
Right.
yeah, it's good.
This
It's
is a
good
true
fiction.
story.
That's good fiction.
Yeah. So
what-
I don't know if you do this, but a lot of times when I have a new idea, where I just have just the idea, like this is the idea,
Mhm.
I will let it steep like a cup of tea for
Yes.
months before I even attempt to outline it, because I feel the more I leave like a little egg in my brain with an idea, and
Mhm.
if I don't think too hard about it, it tends to bloom on its own,
Yeah.
without me really. And I sometimes I think if we have just a slight little idea and we overkill trying to force making it work, then it feels like you force trying to make it work when the book gets written.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Yeah. So do you outline?
So I do a hybrid pantsing to outline.
Yeah.
It's funny. I spoke at a writers conference over the weekend in Fredericksburg, and one of the other presenters there, she said she hates the word pantsing, and she came up with she used a different word that I thought was brilliant, and I wish I had written it down.
ADD.
But there's another word out there for pantsing. Discovery writing. Is that what she called it?
Discovery
Because
writing?
as she writes, she discovers.
Oh, see, I like that. I don't outline either.
Yeah, I think that's what she calls it, discovery writing, which I thought was really cool way of putting it. But I do a hybrid where I know unequivocally how I want it to end.
Yeah.
I know for about 80% of how the second act is going to kind of juggle. But to get there, I pants it. I just, I.
So you brought up something very interesting, and you're the only other author that I've heard this other than myself. My first book, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I'll be perfectly honest. I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I did a little research. I said, So I cut it into acts. Act 1, getting it all ready.
Right.
Act 2, whatever, and 3, finishing it.
Right.
And it really helped me get the book done because how big does Act 1 need to be typically? 90 pages, Act 2, and then Act 3, right? So that really helped me. So that's how I broke it down, act and chapters. And that really helped me for the first book.
Yeah, I do that when I outline. I kind of split it into 3, and I would say only about 40% of everything in the 3 acts are outlined, and the 60% is just left to chance.
Yeah, I have a mind mapping program. You put mind map things. I use that too, because if I say I want to do something or a character has to do something, I have to make sure that I follow it up and he does what he said he was going to do. You have to come to that the finale of what they're supposed to do, and then it all kind of works in one way. So
that's cool. Yeah,
I mean, I am no I had no professional learning or teaching about writing, to say the least.
Yeah, I typically there's no wrong way to pre-production on your book. I mean, if you sit down with a cursor, write chapter 1 with nothing in your brain, and you just start writing, there's nothing wrong with that. Or the person who takes a year to outline it. I mean, everybody comes at it their own way,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I've met a few. I mean, I do. As a matter of fact, about 2-3 weeks ago, I was in Northern Virginia at a Eavesdrop. It's a brewery in Manassas. You ever get a chance, go. It's great. So I did a book signing there. And the reason I did, in April, we were sitting, my wife and my son, and we were sitting there with some friends. I'd never been there before. And I'm finishing up my book. I was getting the ending of my book. I'm like, this is a perfect place to go and have a beer with the team and relax. So I actually put it in the book. Every place in my book you can go to actually visit. So I said, hey, I'm going to put you guys, in my book. Oh, really? I go, yeah. They say, hey, let me know. So, I let them know, hey, it's out. And I sent them a copy and everything. And they go, hey, let's have a book signing. So luckily, the weekend was fantastic about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so we actually had a book signing there.
I wish I had known that. Manassas is only 20 minutes from me. I would have.
I don't know many people, and I'm pretty extroverted. So
yeah, I am too.
So it was really fun because you have to know your audience, right? You have to know who you're selling to,
right?
Because you can go to these different book signings or different places, and you walk in there and you go, this is not my crowd.
Right. Immediately you can tell.
Yeah, but don't get discouraged. You don't sell a book or you sell one. That doesn't. This is a very iterative process about learning what you're doing with your book, from pre-book, book, post-book, right?
Right.
What do you do with that? And then continually modify what you're doing. Like anything, marketing in anything, you modify. You've got to get an elevator pitch, right?
Mhm.
You've got to hook them quick. And a trailer, right? Like I do trailers for the book on
Yeah, so do
video,
I.
because I think it's about a minute of
Yep.
like a commercial, right? That's
Right.
all they are. So
Right.
I do those. But I tell them, you've got to market. You've got to understand keywords, right? You've got to be
Right.
able to know your audience, and then that's what you go to. Just don't go to everyone, because it's not going to pan out.
Yep. Yeah, I've gone and adjusted my keywords on Amazon for books that have been out, for my older novels, because I feel the keywords that I was using were exhausted,
Yes.
and they all, so I've gone and altered them just to try to, help boost sales again.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says that your keyword is
Etched in
finite the moment.
stone. It's etched
Yeah,
in
it's not,
stone.
it's not, it's right. It's not like branded on the book itself,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I always say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There's no reason to manipulate it if you're getting good sales and you feel you have the best keywords. But if you're on the fence with one or two of them, about once a year I go in and tweak. And these are books that have been out. I'm talking about older, like my
Yeah.
2010 novel. I still go in, but once a year, and maybe switch one keyword out with something else,
Yeah.
just to give it a little bit of fluff, like fluffing the pillow, and you've laid on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pillow for too many
Yeah.
nights in a row.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so and I don't think a lot of people think of things like that, where you don't, just because you release a book into the world doesn't mean that now you become stagnant.
Right.
It's not static.
Yeah. It's the book itself may be somewhat static, but the
Right.
process of selling it is living.
Exactly. Yes.
Right. I mean,
Yep.
you go out and look at what people are searching for in Google, related to what your genre is,
Yep.
and I guarantee you that's the same thing they're searching in Amazon,
Yep.
or Books a Million, or Barnes and Noble,
Right.
right? Because they've got how they search,
Right.
and you have to match how they search to what you want them to find.
I advertise heavily on Facebook and Amazon. I'm going to start getting into BookBub soon, but I spend a lot of time, a lot of energy and money on Facebook and Amazon ads.
Yeah.
And I kind of have in my to-do list that on the first of every month that I go in and completely refresh the ad, whether it's changing the keywords, changing the search words, changing my demographics, changing the age that I'm going
Yeah.
after. I just refresh the first of every month. All of my ads get a, and that doesn't mean that I'm changing the image or
Right.
the typeset, although sometimes I do, but that's not all the time. I just go in and I steer the ad towards a different group of people,
Mm-hmm.
and then I do that for a month, and then I steer the ad maybe over here to these types. I'm
Right.
as opposed to throwing every keyword under the sun in one ad and then sitting back and seeing what it does. It's just a little bit of tweaking.
Right.
It's like I don't know, like a periscope. Just I'm
Yeah.
going to look over
Yeah.
here, and I'm going to look over here.
That's
What's right ahead.
AB marketing, right?
Yes,
That's
AB marketing.
AB
Yeah.
marketing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. I've done a little bit. I haven't done a lot of advertising yet. I need to do that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I took a unbelievably good masterclass called Ads for Authors, and it's run by Mark Dawson. And he's a traditionally published author who let his contract expire and then is now just self-published, and he's making more money self-published than he was traditionally. And he puts out these masterclasses, and I've taken every single one, and he has little tidbits in them that you wouldn't think to do if no one was guiding you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I take some of these, and I bought the program for keywords, and how much does a keyword sell, and
right.
Genres, and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, it's definitely there's a lot of tools out there that I didn't know was out there when I started writing my book, but now I know they're out there. I use them. I mean, like religiously, just to make sure. Well, any parting advice to the folks, or go ahead, you've got to cover the book. Let's see it. Let's promote yourself.
Oh yeah, I could grab a cover of I didn't even think to have that ready. Hold on. You know what? I think I can. Let me just bring this. Yeah. So while I'm bringing this up, I would say my parting words are: just remember that this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yep.
And I think some new authors get discouraged or get overwhelmed. I think overwhelmed is probably the better word. With all the social media presence and the marketing, and they say, well, why can't I just write the book? Just don't get overwhelmed. It's one step at a time. And I'm going to share my screen.
Yep, there we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's the new book. That's the one we were talking about.
And so does anybody know why those red flowers are important? What are they called?
Poppies.
Poppies. That comes from World War One.
Yes. Yeah. Do you want me to answer? Or you?
Yeah, no, I want you to answer. Yeah, perfect.
So yes, the poppy is what is handed out on Remembrance Day, which is usually in November, which is the British's version of our Veterans Day. And they wear a paper poppy on their lapel, which signifies peace, the hope of peace and remembrance of the fallen soldiers. So when we were designing the front cover, I knew that I absolutely wanted poppies on the front cover. And so we have the field of real poppies, but then we have the Marine holding a paper poppy that would be attached to the lapels on Remembrance Day, and it's on fire. And that is supposed to signify what's going on inside of him, his turmoil. The paper poppy represents his emotions and mental state throughout the book.
Interesting. That looks nice. I like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, it has been great having you on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Next time I'm in Northern Virginia, I'll give you a buzz, grab a beer.
Yeah, shoot me an email. You have my email address. Shoot me an email, and I'll come down and meet you seriously, I'll come down, meet you for a drink.
I'll drive around. So where can everybody get a hold of you at?
So you can get a hold of me through my website again, brianpaone.com, brianpaone.com. Any book sold from my site, I sign them automatically. So if you want an autographed copy, just buy them right from my site. But they are also available worldwide in every bookstore, every online bookstore. And all of my novels are available as paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So if you're someone that likes to listen rather than read, I am on Audible, I am on iTunes, I am on Chirp, I am everywhere where they sell audiobooks. I'm a wide release author. I'm not Kindle Unlimited or Audible Unlimited. So if you like getting your audiobooks from anywhere, or your ebooks from Barnes and Nobles, Books A Million, Kobo, I don't know if I say that right. I see that word in print so much, but I don't even know if I say it right half the time.
I say a lot of words wrong, so don't worry about it.
I know it sounds weird coming out of my mouth because I usually only see it in print, so I don't say the word very often, but I probably said it wrong and just pissed off a bunch of people.
No big deal. Well, great, Brian. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
You too, sir.
Best of luck, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Perfect. Have a good day. Thank you.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Author Eke. There'll be another episode next week. Please stop by and start your own story. We can't wait to hear it.